The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
The Georgian government has increased tolls for thousands of transit trailers across the country. Until now, each trailer paid 200 lari. However, from June 20, 2022, the road use fee will cost 350 lari. By increasing the fee, Georgia will be able to increase its revenue from the transport corridor by tens of millions of lari. More than 900 trailers cross Georgia every day in 2021. A total of 332,000 trailers use the Georgian corridor, of which lari 66 million was paid to the budget. The European Parliament voted on a resolution on violations of media freedom in Georgia and the security challenges for journalists. European Parliament expresses its concern over the destructive role played by the sole oligarch Bidzina Ivanishvili in Georgia's politics and economy and the level of control he exerts over the government and its decisions, including those on the politically motivated prosecution of journalists and political opponents, is deeply worried by Ivanishvili's exposed personal and business links to the Kremlin, which determine the position of the current government of Georgia towards sanctions on Russia, calls on the Council and democratic partners to consider imposing personal sanctions on Ivanishvili for his role in the deterioration of the political process in Georgia, the resolution reads. Irakli Kobakhidze, chairman of Georgian Dream, responded to the resolution voted by the European Parliament on violations of media freedom in Georgia and the security challenges for journalists. According to him, the resolution supports the assumption made by some experts that the issue of Georgia applying for EU candidate status before the announced date was pushed by ill-wishers of Georgia in order to create artificial difficulties for Georgia and its government. The resolution calls for the release of the enemies of Georgian democracy and media freedom, Saakashvili and Gvaramia. It has nothing to do with the European values, and such a resolution, to put it frankly, is not worth anything. We hope that when Georgia, Ukraine and Moldova become members of the European Union, we will have a different European Parliament, a European Parliament protected from the influence of fake news and a defender of true European values, which can act sovereignly according to its own objective interests. We cannot prove anything, but today's resolution supports the assumption made by some experts that the issue of Georgia applying for the EU candidate status before the announced date was pushed by ill-wishers of Georgia in order to create artificial difficulties for Georgia and its government. Everyone remembers the artificial fuss created by the opposition on this issue when they know very well that granting candidate status has no practical consequences for Georgia, Ukraine or Moldova, Kobakhidze stated. This is the Checkpoints, authored and hosted by me. I'm Elena Gvangelashvili, and the Checkpoints team. We will tell you about the main trends and events, well, mainly in Georgia's business and economy. Member business associations of the Investors' Council have compiled a letter to the President of the European Commission, Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, on Georgia's membership application to the EU. Let me read this very important letter to you. We're writing to you on behalf of the Georgian Investors' Council, which brings together the biggest business associations in the country, the international financial institutions, and the economically oriented components of the Georgian government. We want to express our strong support for Georgia's application for membership to the EU. No one expected to be at this point. Our horror at the atrocities committed against our Ukrainian brothers and sisters is hard to express. Of course, in Georgia, it has particular resonance as it reminds us of the trauma of Russia's invasion of Georgia in 2014. 2008. As a result, the outpouring of support for Ukraine in Georgia has been unparalleled. Clearly, this is a time for unity between all the countries that share the EU values. This unity has been seen in the Western coalition against Russian aggression. This unity should extend to supporting EU candidate status for Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. Such an action would further demonstrate the EU's resolve and would be a signal to these countries that the EU acknowledges their struggles and supports their goal to remain independent Western democracies. Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspiration is unequivocal. The Georgian population overwhelmingly supports EU integration and particularly EU membership. This is driven by shared European values, a shared history, and shared hopes for the future. We all understand gaining EU membership candidate status will be the beginning of our work. The negotiations that follow and the conditions that the EU places on membership will provide a significant reform agenda for the country. Georgia can and will rise to the challenge. For many years, Georgia has been the acknowledged frontrunner in terms of association agreement implementation. The Investors' Council has worked intensively on many of these issues over that time, and we pledge to redouble our efforts to fulfill any requirements of full membership. We are sure that this will include profound challenges, but we are certain that the goal of EU membership will drive us to meet them. All three countries need support in their fight for Western values and democracy and their right to choose their own visions for the future. EU candidacy represents a statement of faith in the people of these countries and will support those of us who are optimistic about a democratic, peaceful, and prosperous path forward. We appreciate your consideration and stand ready to assist you in whatever way we can. This is the appeal of the Investors' Council and its member business associations, namely Business Association of Georgia, AmCham, Georgian Chamber of Commerce, UGBC, ICC, German Economic Union, the Georgian and Turkish Businessmen Association, towards the EU to grant Georgia a EU candidate country status.
What prompted business associations and the Investors' Council to address the European Union and ask them for granting candidate status to Georgia?
Okay, well, the Investor Council works on a wide range of business development issues and has done now for many years since it was first formed. And the recent request to gain EU membership status is undoubtedly the most important potential transformation that one has seen in Georgia in this space, certainly in the 20 years that I've been in Georgia, and I would say arguably since independence. So we are super keen, both as people representing business organizations, but also as citizens and friends of Georgia, to try and encourage that Georgia gets this candidate status.
Why is it important, not only from the political standpoint, but also from the economic, investment environment, all the other standpoints?
Well, I mean, Georgia's already made great strides since it signed the association agreement in 2015. And prior to that as well, in terms of EU integration and alignment in a wide range of ways. We've seen the way in which this has impacted the economy in terms of the way in which business legislation has been made easier, how it's become easier to export internationally, how we've seen transformations in everything from tourism to energy to agriculture to almost any other area of the Georgian economy you can think of. But EU membership is a huge step forward again. And the main reason for this is that while the association agreement gives us access to the EU market without trade restrictions, and the visa-free travel makes it easier to move back and forth between the countries, there's just something fundamentally different about what being an actual citizen state of the EU will confer. And basically what it translates into is that the world then sees that your country, from both an economic, a political, human rights, and an investment point of view, for example, from all of these points of view, the EU is essentially underwriting that your country is on a democratic, on a market-oriented, on a Western trajectory forevermore. You're locked into a whole range of institutions at that point, which give a huge amount of confidence to anybody who wants to invest in the country, that wants to build a factory here, that wants to come and train people for work in the workforce, or for people who simply want to move here or engage with Georgia in any number of different ways.
To be totally frank and honest, how do you assess how this process has been handled by the government on the other side and by the opposition on the other, given this polarized political environment that we are in? And did the Investors Council, did the business community step in this process to see that they are with the Georgian people, that 80% of whom are for Europe and for bringing Georgia back into the European family?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Investor Council is very, very careful not to get involved in politics. The truth is that we live in a very politically polarized world at the moment. Everywhere you look, one sees this, and it's very difficult to disentangle anything that, from my point of view, ought to be an entirely apolitical issue. I mean, something like EU membership ought to be something that everyone from every side of the every side of the political spectrum can agree on. And I think they fundamentally do. I mean, I don't see in Georgia any significant constituency that is opposed to EU membership. But of course, politics is going to be politics, and so we've seen that represented in the way that people have engaged on this issue. I like to focus on the fact that ever since Georgia signed the association agreement in 2015, we have seen firmly consistent behavior on the part of everyone involved in the engagement with the EU to actually put forward an integration path. And as a consequence, we've seen Georgia consistently as the best performer of the association agreement countries. So I think while there are often rhetorical challenges and politics can be problematic in the way it helps engagement on issues that I would very much like to see as non-political, if we actually look at the way, particularly on the issues that we engage in, so on business reform issues, there's just no question that we've seen a consistent and extremely strong pro-EU path now for certainly all of the years since we signed the association agreement.
Yes, and that leads me to my last question, and thank you for your time again. What are the expectations? What does business community expect out of this process? I know that no one has the crystal ball right now, but still, what can be derived from the process that we are in? Shall Georgia get the new candidate status?
Well, I mean, obviously, we hope to get the candidate status, and we'll be very, very disappointed if we don't. The range of the possible obviously comes between something that says candidate status is on the table, but we're not giving it right now for various reasons, and these are things you have to do, to yes, you're getting candidate status, but also these are the things you have to do to actually become an EU member state. So whatever happens when this letter comes out, obviously we'll be very happy if we get the candidate status and very disappointed if we don't. But either way, there is going to be a well-defined path of work to move forward with. And I think whatever response we get, we have to keep our eye focused on the prize. And that really is one where, I mean, I know that that people have talked about EU member status for EU membership for Georgia for a long time. but it really hasn't been something that's been properly on the table as a realistic possibility before now. The change in the circumstances which has been created by the Russian invasion of Ukraine has been huge, and this opening, whatever the letter says when we get the response from the Commission, will continue to be there. And I think it is really important for all of us to come together as much as we can and push forward to try and take advantage of that opportunity.
No matter what the circumstances, right? Whether Ukraine being locomotive, whether Georgia being one wagon in this process. And anyways, it is really important to seize that moment and grant ourselves this opportunity of Georgia becoming a EU candidate country.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, whatever happens, we need to keep pushing towards that goal. And again, even if we get candidate status, there will inevitably be setbacks. There will inevitably be times when whatever the hurdles are that we have to overcome, it will look very, very difficult. But you know, we're going to have to remain resolute and keep on pushing forward, no matter what challenges may be presented. I'm 100% confident we're up to it. I think Georgia has demonstrated time and time again that when the gauntlet is thrown down, when the opportunity is presented, the Georgian people are ready to step up and achieve the things that are demanded of them. So I'm very optimistic about the path ahead. But obviously, we would like to see the candidate status confirmed as a big step in that direction.
Yes, thank you so much. And probably this will also become a booster for better pace of reforms that we are all anticipating, being it regarding the business environment or regarding the justice reform, all the reforms that are right now on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Walton, so much for your.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Bye.
A week ago, Ukraine's largest business association, EBA Ukraine, did the same. I mean, it also appealed to the international community to grant Ukraine a EU candidate status, stating that granting the EU candidate status to Ukraine in June is crucial for business. Currently, Ukraine is going through an unprecedented time, and it is reclaiming peace on the entire European continent. At the same time, businesses, together with the country, need decisive action on the part of European countries and not just states. Business needs to see that the EU's doors are open to Ukraine. There must be a clear signal that confirms the European prospects for our country. Recognizing Ukraine as a candidate for EU membership would be such a signal, reads the statement. According to EBA, Ukraine candidacy and the further accession to the EU are the best frameworks for the post-war recovery of the country and business. Ukraine has been an important player in the European market. It remains so even now, and EU integration is a logical continuation of this role. Besides, it will help lift the spirits of Ukrainian and international businesses operating in Ukraine so that they can stay afloat, jumpstart to a new level of development, and participate in the reconstruction. After all, investments in reconstruction will be most effective if it happens under European standards and with the participation of the EU, reads the statement. Ukraine is a huge opportunity field, namely in agriculture, IT, which currently grows by 20 to 25% annually, mechanical engineering, food and processing industry, metallurgy, and so forth. About 70% of Ukrainians have higher education. Over the past decade, Ukraine's FDI has reached nearly 35 billion USD. For many years, the European Business Association has been supporting and promoting the importance of harmonizing domestic norms, rules, and procedures with those of the EU at maximum. The whole business community looks forward to European leaders granting the EU candidate status to Ukraine in June. That would be the only right decision for the welfare of entire Europe, prosperity of democracy, freedom, and development. Sure, it is a long process, but Ukraine has already proved more than once that it deserves to set foot on the path toward full EU membership. And at the same time, rapid pace as Ukraine is reclaiming its future today, we will fulfill all the requirements chance for Ukraine to become an EU member, reads the statement. I talked to Anna Derevianko, chair of the EBA Ukraine, on the expectations that the business community in Ukraine have towards gaining candidacy status.
For example, in Ukrainian reality, we see certain standards for living, and we can show off very good digital services, very active environment, very creative people, and they are ready to give birth to really wonderful, bright and prominent projects. Whereas when you cross the border of Ukraine and the European Union, even many Ukrainians, they notice the difference in terms of the whole ecosystem, the whole infrastructure, which is being supported by European Union. And this is new standards, new way of doing things. And how will it work in case Ukraine will get this European perspective? Obviously, there would be, at least it is expected, there would be funds available for Ukraine in order to upgrade the whole infrastructure, to upgrade the whole system for living. And it means that there will be a combination of resources to be used, both from stakeholders on the governmental level, and also in case it will be unblocked and unleashed for Ukraine. Obviously, private investors would team up with that, and they will also follow the way of governmental stakeholders. But of course, it should be we should underline that security should be first and foremost, because we need to end the war. But having said so, candidacy does not mean that we will have membership in the first year of our joint actions with European Union. It means that we would have this opportunity, and I hope in the nearest future. But it does not mean that that during the war period of time we would get this membership. At least I do not believe that it will happen, but maybe I'm mistaken. I guarantee that it will not be a political decision. But nevertheless, this wartime might be used and should be used in order to prepare the grounds for our approximation to European standards. We were working on that for quite a number of years, and we have shown certain progress as Ukraine and Ukrainian environment. But obviously, there are lots of other things which needs to be done in order to to fill the gaps in the legislation, which is still missing of European origin, but nevertheless we will be able to make it done in order to be fully prepared when the political decision for entering the EU will be achieved. We will be more than prepared to make it done. So that's why I would say this wartime can be used both for preparation purposes, for strategic thinking as well, for planning how we should be advanced as the society, as the country. It should be used in order to prepare the grounds for our cooperation between businesses of European Union and also Ukraine. And also there should be actually quite a big portion of financial resources unblocked in order to allow real improvement of infrastructure, which is actually ruined, not because of our actions, but this is ruined because of aggressive actions of the neighboring country.
As Anna told me in this online interview, the whole business community in Ukraine understands what could be potential benefits stemming from gaining EU candidate country status.
Now, for example, EU, from what I understand, they also would like to lift all customs duties and quotas for Ukrainian products, for Ukrainian output, without any exclusion, which is already a huge step forward. And this is, when it comes to the candidacy status and future perspective of membership for Ukraine, it would mean that this kind of liberalization would be just fixed legally for long term. And that would mean that Ukrainian businesses and even international businesses operating in Ukraine would have full freedom to develop in secure environment. So this is like real expectation from the business community. Obviously, European Union will have to be unanimous on this decision, because if there would be at least one who would be against that, it will be next to impossible to grant the status to Ukraine. But I think that it's not possible to be currently in between the drops, right? It's necessary to be either on the side of goodwill or on the side of, those ones who are aggressively invading neighboring countries without any reason for that. So I understand that from a human point of view, it's very difficult to stand on certain position because it's very difficult to, to give up your comfort. Because obviously European Union citizens might probably need to pay higher bills for gas, for electricity. Most likely it will be also more discomfort because of this war, because most likely food prices would go up and inflation would be in place. But it's not because of Ukraine, actually, after all, and it's not because of Ukrainian people. It's just because of, aggressive actions of Ukrainian neighbor, and this kind of actions need to be stopped. And so that's why, Ukrainians are now suffering much bigger scope. They are just simply dying, or they are really giving up their homes. They are learning how to live with air raids in place. They are learning how to make agriculture on the fields with mines. So this kind of stuff, which was never imagined 3 months ago. And I think that it's better to live in secure Europe, but to pay bigger bills or higher bills, but to make everything possible in order that this war stops in Ukraine and the peace is being restored.
Yes, this is exactly what we are witnessing for 3 months already, and the bravery of Ukrainian people is just mind-blowing, learning to do agriculture on land that is full of mines. This is the mindset that is doomed to win.
Really, I'm admiring our people and our nation, and it seems to be in the hard time, it has shown off as a very, consolidated society which thinks about the future and about the freedom of society and of the whole country. When I was talking to some businesses abroad and was saying that now currently businesses in Ukraine manage to come back to the 50% or 60% of pre-war financial indicators, everybody is really shocked, because in European countries, quite often regular citizens would probably feel that the business would have to go to zero, actually, as soon as such kind of actions, aggressive actions of neighbors would start. Ukrainian businesses and Ukrainian people show unique resilience. Really, they are just simply unique. They bravely protect their country, and they are ready to die for freedom, for its country, for its families, for every positive momentum which we are all can dream of. Ukrainian people are pretty educated, and they are pretty creative and entrepreneurial. With all the difficulties or drawbacks in investment climate, they managed to be successful, And I remember pre-war Kiev and pre-war Ukraine, I always remember about cool restaurants with fantastic food and not so high prices. I always remember actually Kiev with fantastic digital services, really very quick access to public service. So lots of things which are really sometimes very difficult to find even in advanced economies. So Ukrainians, being very resilient and very educated, yes, they will be able to, to develop their own country, but those ones which left the country would be able to contribute also to the refreshing of those countries which they are in, because they are simply the ones who will not be sitting just for the sake of sitting on the security things, on social security things. They will be trying to mobilize themselves in order to offer some value to the societies where they are living. So I should say that, of course, we are going through hard times, but Ukrainians are quite united in order to understand that their freedom is in their hands, and they will fight until the end, so that to see their country in peace again, and really to make it building or rebuilding from scratch, and to become a real successful economy.
My last question to Anna was, what can Georgia, Europe, the international community do today and now to support Ukraine and help alleviate the situation to the extent it can be done from outside? Here's what Anna Deravienko, head of the largest business community, EBA Ukraine, told the Checkpoints.
I think that, first of all, the world altogether should do everything possible to stop the war on the European continent. And this is like full stop. Period. It should be done, because in case it's not going to be stopped, it will go further, and it will never be, a very good characteristic for peaceful development on European continent. So it's necessary to equip Ukraine and Ukrainians with all means necessary in order to stop the war. As soon as it will be done, obviously the EU and the world can actually contribute to the funds which are being opened now to reconstruct the country. I really like the idea of making twinnings or twin cities between Europe and actually maybe it's not only Europe and Ukrainian cities, whereas each city of European Union, which is really volunteering to team up with Ukrainian city to upgrade it. I think it can be really a very good combination of ideas and really very high level intelligence in order to make from Ukraine a really modern example of well-being and success. So this can be done for sure. The second, I think that it's possible what the world and EU can do. I think that European and global investors would also be able to come to Ukraine as soon as they will feel secure. And for this, in this respect, it's necessary to figure out whether a respective insurance could be available in order to allow investing even now, because without insurance, without security, it will not be possible to properly expect substantial amounts of money coming into the country. So everybody will be waiting for peaceful resolution of the conflict. But nevertheless, in case it would be insurance in place, I guess some funds, both from private investors and state-owned institutions, state institutions, would be coming to Ukraine. So this is second block of things which could be done. Third, I guess it's necessary to continue what the world is doing and the EU is doing, but just it's necessary to have more unity inside the European Union in terms of equipping Ukraine with weapons and everything possible in order to allow Ukrainians to stop aggressive actions of neighboring country. And third and fourth, which is even more important for Ukrainians, I guess, this to grant membership perspective, candidacy status for Ukraine and Ukrainians in the European Union. In case it will be done, I guess it will be a political signal to the whole world that EU is also with Ukraine.
Yes, this is what the three countries are waiting for today, a goodwill from the EU to grant EU candidate country status to Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, understanding completely that Ukraine is the locomotive today, Moldova and Georgia, two wagons. The International Chamber of Commerce in Georgia did not attend the meeting of the Investors' Council under the Prime Minister this week. The reason stated by the ICC was the last-minute removal from the agenda of the issue regarding the arbitrary cancellation, confiscation of residency permits by the security services that, according to ICC, for years now has been the #1 impediment to foreign investment in Georgia. ICC stated that foreign investments in Georgia have been in total stagnation since 2013 due to the unfriendly attitude of the government towards foreign investors. Since years now, the Georgian security services have been systematically denying residency permits to a multitude of foreign investors, cancelling the residency permits arbitrarily without any justified reason after those investors would have invested in the country, which compelled many of them to leave the country, abandoning their investments behind them, according to ICC. Also, according to the ICC, this practice has gained Georgia a terrible reputation internationally. The International Chamber of Commerce is the largest business organization in the world that includes over 46 million businesses and 12,000 chambers of commerce. ICC consults regularly at the global level with the G7, G20, the World Bank, WTO, WCO, and the UN. Chairman of the ICC Georgia, Fadi Asli, sat down with the checkpoints for the interview.
ICC did not attend the meeting of the Investors' Council that was held today. What was the reason for that?
Because we had requested to add to the agenda the problem that investors are facing regarding their residence permits and how many times those residence permits are not given, although they did invest money in the country as per the law, or how sometimes those residency permits are confiscated or just cancelled. And this has created a lot of problems over the years with investors. So we requested the Investors' Council Secretariat to put it on the agenda. And we had a couple of times talks, extensive talks, and they agreed to put it on the agenda for the meeting today with the Prime Minister. Yesterday, the Secretariat called our Secretary General, who called me and said that maybe they need to work more to get information. So they are ready for the discussion, which is totally irrelevant because we don't need much information. We know what's going on. But, you know, they just simply didn't want to discuss this issue. And this is not the first time, because during Gaharia's term, we also requested this to be on the agenda. They deleted it one day before the meeting. When Bakhtazi was Prime Minister, we requested it to be on the agenda. They also deleted it one day before the meeting. So it's obvious that they're not very keen to discuss this matter. And honestly, I don't want to go to the Investors' Council to discuss, I don't know, a manicure, pedicure, okay? And weather. We are there to discuss real problems that are impediments to the investment climate. And if those problems are not of interest to the government, then there is no need for us to attend the Investors' Council.
What is the mandate of the Investors' Council at this point, and does this mandate allow to speak about this very specific issues that may be in front of the investors, or is it more broader, so to say, about the reforms, about the reform agenda, like general economic I don't know, like trends? What is the mandate there? And maybe there should be some changes in the mandate of the
No, the mandate
Council.
is very clear. We always discuss the issues pertaining to the investment climate. I mean, the mandate of the Investors' Council is to discuss the issues that affect investment in the country, whether those are strategic issues, whether they're legislative, whether they're punctual. We had very good meetings when Georgi, the former Prime Minister, before, I mean, in 2000 and between 2000 and 2000, Virikashvili. We had very good meetings with him, and many issues that were obstacles to investment, to foreign investment, were solved during his tenure as Prime Minister. After that, the Investors' Council turned into like a bureaucratic structure that is kind of a department of the Ministry of Economy, okay? And you know, I mean, we're not there to just meet the Prime Minister and the Minister from the economic teams and shake hands and show our nice tie and our nice suit. We are there to solve issues that are affecting the country. And I believe that the issue of the residency permits is extremely important because it has gained Georgia a terrible reputation within the spheres of foreign investors. No one wants to touch Georgia anymore. Georgia has gained a terrible reputation. It's perceived as a dangerous country for investment, as an unreliable one. And many investors had their residencies seized at the airport while they were had landed in Tbilisi, and they were confiscated and they were returned on the same plane. It happened several times, and they left their investments behind them. I mean, how can you build confidence within the foreign investment community if the word of mouth is spreading so fast about how foreign investors are treated in Georgia? So this is like a fundamental thing. If this is not solved, you know, all other issues like smaller issues or, you know, promoting Georgia abroad. How can you promote Georgia abroad if you cannot guarantee for investors that they can work in the country?
One of the issues that has been discussed on this current Investors Council was also the EU candidate country status for Georgia. What type of issue is that, in your opinion? Is that a minor issue for this country at this point?
You know, Georgia will join the EU, if it joins the EU, as a wagon behind the locomotive that is Ukraine. It is Ukraine that will make Georgia join the EU. If at face value, looking at the performance of the government, at the state of the democracy, of the human rights, of the way foreign investors are treated, I mean, not even my grandchildren will see the candidacy of Georgia. So if Georgia joins is not because of its own merit. It is definitely because it will be a package deal, political deal to get Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. This is my opinion. Now, when it comes to paperwork, the Georgians are very good. This means they prepared good files, they made reforms that remain on paper. So on paper, we are good candidates, but practically, if you look at the situation on the ground, we are very far from being good candidates for it.
What is your expectation? Shall we get the status or not?
I tell you, either the three countries will get it or none of them will get it. This is my expectation, but I cannot predict, you know. I'm not Nostradamus, okay? But I believe that either the three countries will be in or none of them will be in. This is my opinion.
Yeah, we don't have a crystal ball, that's true.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, what, besides the residency permits that you just mentioned, what type of issues would you like to see on the agenda of the Investors Council in general?
I need to see a total change of attitude of the government towards foreign investors. The past 10 years have been the darkest period in Georgia for foreign investment. I cannot recall the number of foreign investors who were embezzled, racketeered, mistreated, defrauded by the court, by their partners, by the government. I mean, you know better than I do. And during the Saakashvili's time, the same bad things were happening to the Georgian businesses, but the foreign investors were very well treated. During this government, it's the opposite. We see the Georgian businesses that are taken care properly, and the foreign investors that are being very well handled. We would like to see a shift of 180 degrees from the government totally, with instructions to the courts to judge impartially when foreign investors approach the courts or when they are sued, to the security services and to the border guards to respect foreigners when they arrive to Georgia, not treat them like cattle, which is the case now. So you need real political will. But to be very honest with you, I don't feel since 10 years that this government has any good political will or real political will to attract foreign investment in the country, except, you know, at the lower level of the hierarchy, like deputy ministers and lower who go abroad and who try to help Georgia as much as possible. But at the top, this is not happening. It's quite the opposite.
Galip Bozturk,
Yes.
the Turkish businessman in Batumi.
Yeah.
What is your take on how that case had been handled?
I'll tell you, when this gentleman came to Georgia, His criminal record was longer than that of Al Capone. He was wanted in Turkey, and he was convicted for life imprisonment. And before that, 5-6 times, he had to go to court on embezzlement issues, on racketeering, on murder, on things like this. He came here and he got protected by this government. Not only he got protected, but he got granted Georgian citizenship. And now the winds have turned. Probably, the people who were protecting him are upset at him. Maybe he didn't pay someone. And now they went and they found 3.6 grams of cocaine in his house, okay? So it's all a political thing. It's not that the guy was whiter than white. I mean, I'm even surprised how he was allowed to do business in Georgia in the first place in 2013 when he came here. I'm very surprised how he got his Georgian citizenship at a time super honest businessmen are being rejected for residency. But this is how things are done in Georgia.
Then to sum up our conversation, what would be your main message to the Investors Council today?
Work on the issues that are important for investment. Don't work on manicure, pedicure, waxing issues. This is my message. I mean, there are fundamental problems within the investment climate. The attitude of the government towards the investors in hydropower, for example. How many of them have been totally defrauded from their investments because they couldn't carry on their investments after spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. Those are issues that need to be addressed. The attitude towards Anaklia. This is an issue that the Investors Council should have worked on. And so on and so forth. At a time, we look at the very small picture, the very small things, about the Investors Council today is doing the work of the Ministry of Economy. That's it. The same issues that are worked on by the Ministry of Economy are worked on by the Investors Council. But no big pictures, no major issues, nothing that can improve the business climate. And if this Investment Council was any useful, we wouldn't be in this situation today, and we are at the same level as we were in 2012.
For example, Rothschild & Co is working on the strategy for Georgia, as the government is telling us about drawing trust funds to Georgia and turning Georgia into financial hub. Would that count as a fundamental issue for the Investors Council?
Look, when it comes to ideas and the big titles, we have been hearing a lot of them during the past 10 years. How long does it take to turn Georgia into a financial hub? If within 6-7 months the legislation is not in place and the investors are starting to come, this means nothing is happening.
The foreign direct investments, FDI, in Georgia amounted to USD 568 million in the first quarter of 2022, around $436 million more. That is more than 4 times higher compared to the same data from last year. An increase in reinvestment and equity is considered to be the main reason for the growth of FDI. That's what the figures from Geostat show. According to the report, Spain reaching USD 196 million, that is 34.5% of the total investment in the first quarter this year, was the major foreign direct investor country. The United Kingdom was the second with USD 87 million, that's 15.3%, followed by Turkey with the USD 67.1 million, and that's 11.8%. Spain ranks first due to the acquisition of Georgian Water and Power, GWP, GDP by company Aqualia, LLC Aqualia Georgia, sits on the list of top investors. Top investors include some very interesting names as well. For example, Ideas Borjomi Georgia, a Georgian branch of Ideas Borjomi Beverages Company, owned by sanctioned Russian businessman billionaire Friedman, and now Georgia State is eyeing to become Borjomi's shareholder. Now, or for example, JSC Metro City Trade Center Batumi, its investor Galip Ozturk, is currently facing a detention from 8 to 12 years or life imprisonment for a particularly large amount of drugs, more than 7 grams of cocaine. Or JSC Hualing International Special Economic Zone, a relatively new face on top investor list, mainly with the investment in building a new office for Georgia's Ministry of Economy. The United Kingdom ranks second because the main players in Georgia's financial sectors, TBC, Bank of Georgia, Georgia Capital, are considered to be British companies. The largest share of FDI was registered in the water energy sector, reaching USD 236 million, or for around 42% of the total investment in the first quarter of 2022. The financial sector was the second with USD 111 million, or 19.5%, followed by the real estate sector with USD 81 million, or around 14%. Top investor countries include Malta and Marshall Islands as well. These are the places that Georgian companies use mainly for investments. If we look at the total volume of investments in the first quarter, that's 568 million USD. Out of this $568 million, 319 million comes on reinvestments, accounting to 56%. The World Bank has sharply downgraded its outlook for the global economy, pointing to Russia's war against Ukraine, the prospect of widespread food shortages, and concerns about the potential return of stagflation, a toxic mix of high inflation and sluggish growth unseen for more than 4 decades. The 189-country anti-poverty agency predicted Tuesday that the world economy will expand 2.9% this year. That would be down from 5.7% global growth in 2021 and from the 4.1% it had forecasted for 2022 back in January. For many countries, recession will be hard to avoid, said David Malpass, the World Bank's president. The agency doesn't foresee a much brighter picture in 2023 and 24. It predicts just 3% global growth for both years. For the United States alone, the World Bank has slashed its growth forecast to 2.5% this year, for 5.7% in 2021, and from the 3.7% it had forecasted in January. For the 19 European countries that share the euro currency, it downgraded the growth outlook to 2.5% this year from 5.4% last year and from the 4.2% it had expected in January. In China, the world's second biggest economy after the United States, the World Bank expects growth to slow to 4.3% from 8.1% last year. China's zero COVID policies involving draconian lockdowns in Shanghai and other cities brought economic life to a standstill. The Chinese government is providing aid to ease the economic pain. Emerging market and developing economies are collectively forecasted to grow 3.4% this year, decelerating from a 6.6% pace in 2021. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has severely disrupted global trade in energy and wheat, bettering a global economy that had been recovering robustly from the coronavirus pandemic. Already high commodity prices have gone even higher as a result, threatening the availability of affordable food in poor countries. There's a severe risk of malnutrition and of deepening hunger and even of famine, Malpass warned. The World Bank expects oil prices to surge 42% this year and for non-energy commodity prices to climb nearly 18%, but it foresees oil and other commodity prices both dropping 8% in 2023. It likened the current spike in energy and food prices to the oil shocks of the 1970s. Additional adverse shocks, the agency warned in its new Global Economic Prospects report, will increase the possibility that the global economy will experience a period of stagflation reminiscent of the 1970s. The prospect of stagflation poses a dilemma for the Federal Reserve and other central banks. If they continue to raise interest rates to combat inflation, they risk causing a recession. But if they try to stimulate their economies, they risk driving prices higher and making inflation an even more intractable problem. The World Bank noted that the previous period of stagflation required rate increases so steep that they tipped the world into recession and led to a series of financial crises in the poor countries of the developing world, the AP reports. Well, that's all for today. I hope it was interesting. Till next time, and have a peaceful weekend. Follow us on bm.g and forbes.g and send us your feedback on what type of news, trends, stories you would like to appear in the checkpoints. Till we meet again, watch our teaser for the new Forbes Georgia edition to stay updated on everything you need to know about success.
Now we are in Zahesi, where the super modern multifunctional complex winemaking Bainachi will be launched soon, the construction of which is currently led by Element Construction, the company whose turnover across the holding exceeds 100 million GEL, and the portfolio considers the most difficult and important completed or ongoing project for the country. So behind the reins of industrial construction with professional team members, Levan Beradze and Badaj Dorelizi are standing, who continue to introduce innovative approaches and don't give up positions. The company's founders talk about outstanding projects and future plans in the new issue of Forbes Georgia, which is the main topic of the publication.
Also, in the new issue of Forbes Georgia, you can read the following in the rankings: the world's highest paid people in the entertainment industry, the largest philanthropes in the USA, led by Warren Buffett, with a net profit of more than $115 billion and more than $46 billion in philanthropy. In 2021, local companies earned $400 million by exporting Georgian wine, which is the record number in the history of independent Georgia. Who are the largest producers of Georgian wine and brands in Georgia? Forbes has updated the ranking of companies producing alcohol beverages. We also share the success story of Temur Jghoniya and Magic M, the path that lead the businessman and McDonald's Georgia to the Fred Turner Global Arch Award 2022, which is actually like the Oscar award within the industry. You can read a very interesting interview with the administrative director of PSP, Mamuga Brekadze, who speaks about the prices of medicine, the procedure required for GDP certification, and the challenges in the industry. In June Forbes edition, you will also read the following: who is the most paid influencer? Can Russia withstand the sanctions? And which are the most successful blockchain companies?
It is the Georgian Forbes special project, the second season of Shark Tank Georgia. Investors or the same sharks hear ideas from startup businesses, and as a result, there are already 14 founded projects with a total investment of $1.5 million. Forbes wondered how the sharks themselves started doing business and the things that contributed to their business success. You will learn everything in the June issue of Forbes. So read Forbes, a century-old guide to business and economics.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.